2 summers ago, my now ex-girlfriend Kat and I were sitting next to the edge of this cliff at a beach on New York's North Shore overlooking the water. It was super dark, the only real light source being the full moon above us. We were just chilling looking up at the clear night sky looking for shooting stars, one of our favorite nighttime activities. The whole reason we always went to this beach, especially the part we were at, was because no one ever went there. It's pretty isolated and hard to find unless you're really searching for it. You have to walk through a trail for about 10 minutes or so first before it opens up into a small area free of foliage, above the main part of the beach below. It was a great little spot to smoke in peace. We were having a good time talking about stupid shit and passing a bowl to each other, and then I heard this mumbling followed by twigs snapping behind us. I put my index finger up signaling for Kat to be quiet, and I turned and looked into the dark foliage for about a minute, but there was nothing. It was a little weird because it was around 1 a.m., but I thought maybe it was just some of the other people exploring the trails. No big deal, right? Then I heard it again, that same mumbling followed by twigs snapping, closer this time. I quickly turned again and there was a dude standing right at the edge of the tree line, which was about 10 feet away from us. He had long dark hair, no shirt or shoes on, just jeans and a weird tribal looking necklace. It was pretty dark and his hair was so long and thick that it shrouded his face, so I couldn't really make out any distinct features. He was kinda whispering, but it was a really quiet night. There was no wind or waves crashing below us. His voice made the hairs on my arms stand up. It was really monotonous but soft, and he was speaking French. I don't speak fluent French, but I understood a good amount of it due to the fact that I spent 10 years of my life on the southeast border of England, right by the Channel Tunnel, so I learned some in school and also dealt with a lot of French tourists when I worked at a fish and chip shop. He started to say something in French. Now I'm not 100% sure, but I believe he asked me if I'm afraid of death. Maybe I didn't hear him right. It had been almost 4 years since I moved back to New York by then, so I responded, "What?" Nope, I definitely heard him correctly. I stood up facing him and my eyes adjusted to the darkness behind him a little, where I saw 2 more people on either side of him. A girl in some kind of white dress and another shirtless guy slightly further back. They were just standing there. I didn't say anything, I just crouched down to Kat, who had remained silent the whole time, keeping my eyes fixed on these weirdos, grabbed her hand, bringing her up to a standing position and slowly walked us towards a much less steep part of the cliff, where we were able to carefully climb down towards the main area and where I parked my car, avoiding the trail all the while constantly looking over my shoulder. I was visibly shaken by the whole ordeal. I'm not a small dude. I'm 6'4", but my girlfriend was 4'11", little Latina chick, and I had left my knife at home so I wasn't taking any chances. Cap kept asking me what the guy was saying, but I didn't want to creep her out too much, so I just told her I didn't know, and that they were probably just tourists asking for directions or something. She wasn't really buying it, but she eventually dropped it once we got in my car. This may be pretty tame by this sub standards, and it definitely doesn't compare to some of the crazy shit I've read on here, but it gave me the fucking creeps and I've avoided going to that beach ever since. This all happened in July 2004. I was 12 at the time and my parents brought me to Kona, Hawaii, the Big Island. Needless to say, that was an amazing time, and it's just about the last place you'd expect something creepy to happen. That is, until the second to last night I was there. My parents and I were tossing around a ball in the ocean when I overthrow my dad and a kid my age catches it. We invite him to join in, and after a while my parents get tired and go back to the beach while me and him stay in playing. A woman that appears to be his mother is walking around taking pictures of us over and over, and when my mom tries to start a conversation with her, the woman completely ignores her. By the way, the kid's name is Jason. Turns out the kid lives in Los Angeles and is headed back tomorrow just as we are. Once it gets dark, we go back at the beach and we don't see Jason's mother anywhere. After searching all over the beach, we head back to the hotel. To clarify, the hotel is directly behind the beach with a pool and bar in between. You can vaguely see the beach through the palm trees depending on the floor, but certainly not your child. We take Jason up to his room to see if his mother is there, and he says hello to a man on the way up as if he knows him. My mom asks if the man is his dad and he says no, as his father ran off 5 months after he was born. We knock on the hotel door several times and we hear the TV on, but no one answers. We're all pretty hungry, so we go down to the lobby to use the phone. He calls up to his room and leaves a message that we're going to the downstairs restaurant to eat. So we have buffalo wings and soda and we talk about SpongeBob, Ed, Edd and Eddy, etc. He seemed like any other kid. It was a bit strange though when we were in the ocean and lost one of our floats. He went swimming after it way too far and my dad called him to come back. Otherwise, who knows how far he'd have chased it and possibly drowned. Now, it's officially been at least 3 hours since we saw any sign of his mother, until we head back up to the lobby. She's there by the concierge screaming at us that she called the police. Knowing how crazy this was, my dad called them as well. They arrive rather quickly and we tell our story all the while Jason's mother is shouting at us that we're trash. I don't recall Jason saying much of anything. Eventually the situation dies down and we go back to our rooms, placing a desk in front of the door. Fortunately, we don't run into them on the way back. I never saw either of them ever again, but I really hope Jason is doing okay. I was 19 and my friends and I went down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina for senior week. We went along with a large group of kids who had just graduated from high school. We filled several rooms in our motel. Our group included 21-year-old kids, so there was plenty of alcohol and we were partying inside and outside the motel at night. The second night we were there, I had way too much to drink but was too young and naive to know I shouldn't be walking around outside like that. There were a lot of people outside our room. Many we knew and many we didn't. I was outside and there were boys we didn't know who were making moves on me. I was very intoxicated and barely conscious. My 2 closest friends saw what was happening and they grabbed me and took me to our room, where we all went to bed. Later that night there was a loud banging on the door. I got up to answer it and when I opened the door there were 3 of the boys who had been outside with us earlier. One grabbed my arm, another grabbed my other arm and they took me to their car. They then put me in the back seat where one sat with me and the other 2 sat in the front. If you've ever been to Myrtle Beach, you know how crowded it gets in the summer and how bad traffic is. We were in a convertible with the top down and were right in the middle of this traffic. I was still drunk and barely conscious. I must have passed out or blacked out a lot because I had trouble recalling everything that happened. I remember that they were worried the cops or someone would see me, so they pushed my head down. I won't go into details, but yes, they did cross the line. I was not raped, but I was assaulted, and I did let them know I didn't want to have sex with them. I don't know how long they had me, but it seemed like we rode around for a long time and then I think they got spooked. There were a lot of cops out at that time, so they brought me back to my motel, pushed me out of the car and left. My friends were standing outside looking for me. One of them had seen the boys grab me. We saw them the night after that too. My friends and I were walking in the parking lot adjacent to our motel when a black convertible Mustang drove by and one of them yelled,
"Hey, there's that girl we raped last night."
Which wasn't even true. We got in my friend's car and tried to find them to get their license plate number but couldn't catch up to them. We just saw that it was a South Carolina tag. Whenever I think back on that night, I always wonder if they might have drugged me because when I was outside with them, they kept handing me drinks. Well, that's my embarrassing drunk kidnapping story. Let it be a lesson to you younger kids, especially girls. Don't drink too much around people you don't know and don't accept drinks from them either. You really never know what someone's intentions truly are. Okay, so this happened in Maine when I was about 3 years old, almost 4. I was at a beach with my mom. We went as a group with some other stay-at-home moms and their kids. It was a fairly hot and crowded day there and I found myself playing with the other kids at the edge of the water. For some reason I strayed away a bit and that's when a middle-aged woman started talking to me. I remember her very clearly. She looked exactly like a mother would, with a one-piece black bathing suit, cargo shorts, sunglasses, and her hair pulled up in a bun. She asked me what games I liked to play and what my favorite candy was. As soon as I told her, I believe I said Tootsie Pops, she told me she had some in her car and persuaded me to come with her. Yes, I know, I was quite the naive child. She was cheerful and enthusiastic, taking my hand and leading me away through the crowded beach. I skipped alongside her and had no fear whatsoever. Then, thank God, my mom spotted me from a distance and started screaming my name at the top of her lungs and jumping up and down while waving her arms. The woman immediately let go of my hand and darted away. I just stood there terribly confused until my mom got to me. Whenever I look back and think about it, I get the chills. She seemed so nice at the time, though I admit I was way too trusting. I now know it was an attempted kidnapping. If my mom hadn't spotted me, who knows where I would be or if I would even be alive, but I'm really glad I am. This happened when I was 19 or 20. I was an attractive and very petite female, 5'3" and 100 pounds. I was at a beach near my house in New Jersey in the middle of the day, but it was early May and about 60 degrees out, so not too many people were there. Maybe 2 or 3 on the beach. I was by myself in a bathing suit sitting on my towel reading a book when this man came up to me. The man was probably in his late 30s, early 40s, fit and what most people would consider attractive. He sat down on my towel and asked me what I was reading. I was already freaked out that a stranger would come up and sit on my towel with me, but I answered. He kept asking me questions like my name, my age, where I went to school, and I made up all of my answers on the spot. Then he moved over and sat right next to me and started putting his hand on my crotch. I screamed and ran, and luckily there was someone else on the beach at this time who looked over at us, so he didn't chase me. I ran back to my car that was in a parking lot about a half a mile away. There were no other cars there, and I looked around and didn't see the man anywhere. I assumed my scream and the other person on the beach scared him off. Fast forward 2 or 3 days later and I get a letter in the mail without a return address. It was stamped from a post office as a town in Pennsylvania where I remember the man saying he was from. Keep in mind I was still living with my parents at the time. I opened the envelope and it's 2 pages front and back handwritten from the man. I know I didn't tell him any real information about myself, so I have no idea how he found my address or any of the info he wrote about. He knew my full name, the school I went to, and my parents' names and cell phone numbers. He also wrote about seeing me at a place where I was a few days prior. I was freaking out at this point and shaking. He signed his name and left a phone number, but again, no address. I immediately went to the police with the letter in a plastic bag in case they would look at his fingerprints. I told the detective about him touching me on the beach as well. The detective said he couldn't do anything because there was no evidence of a crime, but offered to call and scare him. I agreed and he kept the letter, and I'm assuming he called the man that day and told him to leave me alone. I never heard from him again, but I was sure I saw him following me in a car shortly after. After I ran away on the beach, he must have either followed me back to my house or gotten my license plate number to get all of the information that he wrote about. But I looked everywhere and there was no cars behind me when I left or really anywhere in the park. I was paying extremely close attention. I also didn't go straight back to my house. I drove about an hour away to my friend's because I was so freaked out and didn't go home until late that night. So he either followed me all throughout that time, got my information from my license plate, or had been following me previously. Whatever the case, I hope I never see him again.
When I was in high school, some 25 years ago, I never had typical high school jobs. I worked as a mechanic's apprentice and a lot of construction odd jobs. The summer of my 10th or 11th grade year, I worked as a helper doing flooring. The job site was this older lady's house, and she was there the entire time we were doing the work. The guy I was working with would often juggle a couple job sites, so he would get things set up and usually leave me with a long task, such as tearing out the old flooring. Almost immediately, when I was there on my own, she calls over from the dining room that she thinks she is having a heart attack. It was a bit odd because she was drinking beer and smoking too. I asked her if she wanted me to call for help. She said no, but if I could help her to her room and maybe she just needed to lay down. So I helped her to her bedroom and she lays down on the bed. She starts to just hold on to my hand. I asked her again if there was anyone she wanted me to call. She said no, that's okay, just to stay with her a while. She asked me to lay on the bed with her. I told her no, that I needed to get back to work. She said that I don't care about the work and I want you to be here with me. After sitting there a while, she started moaning out of nowhere. She turned to me and asked me if I wanted a beer. I told her no, but if there was anything I could get for her, let me know. She said that she wanted another beer. As I go and get it for her, there was someone at the front door. He walks in and goes to her room. I go and hand her the beer, and she said this is her son. They didn't look like they were related at all. She was white and he was Hispanic. I took my chance and I left the room. Later, she is laughing, and they walk to the living room where she is bent over a pillow with her butt up in the air and only wearing panties and a long t-shirt. He grabs her private parts and turns to me and asked if I wanted to tickle her. I said no, that I need to get back to work. The next day, I am left alone now doing the demo work in the dining room. She calls me over to her bedroom, and she starts the same thing about how she thinks she is having a heart attack. This time, I am like, is there anyone you would like me to call? She then reaches out and starts rubbing on my crotch and starts moaning. She says, why don't you take those dirty clothes off and lay down with me? I start to freak out, and I tell her that I am only 16. She didn't care, and she said, I'm going to tell your boss what you're doing. She freaks out and starts getting all weird and accusing me of looking through her things. Then, she switches to being very touchy to me. She started opening up her robe and spreading her legs and moving around like she was having an orgasm. I started to freak out a little bit, and I told her that I had to leave because I didn't want to get fired. So I walked out again. Then, after that, every time she called out for me, I just turned up the radio and acted like I didn't hear her. Later that day, her son arrived again. Now they were both in her room. When I could go throw trash outside, I could see down the hallway and see that they were having sex, loudly with the door open. Shortly after that ended, my boss came back the following day, and he was on the job site with me, thankfully. Now looking back, I know that she wasn't a little old lady, but probably in her late 50s, but to me in high school, it seemed like she was really old. Growing up, my aunt and uncle owned a beach condo. My favorite way to spend the summer was to stay there with my family, specifically my cousin Charlie. We were absolutely inseparable growing up. There was a 1-year difference between us. The beach we stayed at was a very popular tourist beach on the South Carolina coast. So in the summer, it was incredibly busy. I mean, barely any room between you and the family next to you. Now, my family would spend all day on the beach, from about 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. The beach would stay crowded until about 5 p.m., then everyone would go back to their rooms to shower and go out to eat. So, from around 5 to 7 every day was my favorite time to be outside. We would actually have room to run wild, build sandcastles, and dig huge holes and not have to worry about people knocking them down or being too close. Around 5:30 p.m. one day, my family decided that they wanted to walk to the pier about 2 miles away, and me and Charlie begged to stay so we could build sandcastles. We were 9 and 10 at the time, and they said we could stay as long as we didn't get in the water or leave our beach spot. The condo we stayed at was 1 row back, and we were not allowed to cross the street without adults. We agreed to our terms and continued to build a row of sandcastles as they walked away. Around 5 minutes later, an extremely tall man wearing a floppy beach hat, sunglasses, with a dollop of sunscreen on his nose, came straight up to us. He started commenting on how pretty our sandcastles were, asking how long it took us to build them at high, if it was just the two of us working on them, which I clearly see what he was getting at with these questions now. We were both extremely introverted kids. We thanked him, kept our answers short, and tried to ignore him as we stood there. All of a sudden, he got really quiet, started looking around at the mostly empty beach, and he said that he had to go meet his friend. He told us to stay right there so he could bring his friend back to look at how great our sandcastles were, and walked away from us. When he got away at a safe distance, me and Charlie both looked at each other and said, "We've got to get out of here." Side note, hell yeah at us for being smart kids. We immediately started weighing our options. We knew our family wouldn't get back for at least another 30 minutes. We also knew we weren't allowed to cross the street, and quite frankly, we were scared to. About 100 yards away is a tiny ramp overlooking the ocean. I believe it was a handicap access to the beach, as well as just a place to sit. We got our big shovels and decided to hollow out under the ramp pier just enough so we could crawl under and not be seen. It didn't take us long since the high tide over the years had taken out a good 3 feet of sand underneath, and our adrenaline was rushing mad fast. We took our shovels inside and crawled under. The man is still yet to be seen. I assume it took us all of 8 minutes to climb under the pier. Our heads were partially visible above the sand horizon, and we started freaking out thinking he would be able to spot us, if he looked hard enough. There were 2 boogie boards laying about 50 yards away that looked like kids had abandoned on the beach. We grabbed them and propped them up against the ramp covering the crawl space and the top of our heads from sight. Charlie curled up in a ball and cried while running scenarios by me that we were definitely going to get taken. I tried to calm down and say everything was going to be okay. Our parents would both be back soon anyway. But I definitely felt like crying myself. The whole thing felt so weird. I felt that since we both had such a bad feeling about the situation, especially at a young age, this man definitely had sinister intentions. Charlie and I peeked out of the small slits, where the boogie boards curved, and eventually saw the man walking back. Once he realized, and thankfully didn't notice us there, where we had gone, he got extremely angry, noticeably angry. He started huffing and puffing and stomping around. Then he looked at our sandcastles and kicked all of them down. We built a ton over the course of the day, and it basically had a long wall of them. And he kicked every single mound down and stormed away. We stayed under the ramp pier for about 45 more minutes until our family got back. We were too scared to say anything, because we don't think they would have believed us. We still talk about it sometimes at family gatherings or holidays. Both of us still remember.
Hey everyone, what's going on? I hope you enjoyed the video, and special thank you to Swamp Dweller for once again helping me out. So, I know it's been a minute since I've uploaded, and I've been kind of slacking. Just have had a lot going on, and I'm trying to get back into things. But I want to thank all of you so much for all of you that have supported me through Patreon and donated on PayPal. I really appreciate you guys so much. And before we close out the video, I want to shout a few people out. So first of all, we've got a couple of new patrons that have joined since the last video. We've got Lacey, we've got Lisa, we've got Travis, and we've got Danielle. Thank all of you so much for pledging. And you should see a picture on screen of all my patrons that have recently pledged. So if you ever do decide to pledge, you'll be in the description as well as on screen. So thank all of you so much for pledging to my Patreon. Every single one of my patrons, I love and appreciate you so much. We've got about 20 more days, I think, until we can see if I'm eligible for remonetization on the channel, and really hoping that that works out, but we'll see. But again, thank all of you so much. I love all of you so much. So let's move on to our PayPal shout out. Let me pull that up here real quick. So, since our last video, we've got a $5 donation from Emmett. Thank you, Emmett. I really appreciate that. We've got a $10 donation from Jackie. Thank you, Jackie. We've got a $5 donation from Sean. Thank you, Sean. We've got a $1, almost $2 donation from Mr. Davis. Thank you very much, brother. And for those of you who don't know, Swamp Dweller, who you know we're super tight, one of my closest friends in the community, he did a bunch of live streams trying to help me out and support me, and all of the donations he got from his own live stream he donated to me, which ended up being $200. So like, oh my god, I am so grateful to that dude. Like, Swamp, if you're watching this, thank you so much, bro. I love you to death. You're just a great person, and I really, really appreciate you so much. So yeah, big shout out to Swamp Dweller. Please go check out Swamp and tell him that, tell him I love him. Tell him, just go show him some love, please. But to move on from that, we've also got a $5 donation from, I don't know if I can pronounce this correctly, Chantalon. I don't know if I'm saying your name correctly, but I really appreciate you for that $5 donation. Thank you so much. And yeah, I guess that's it, guys. But seriously, I thank all of you that have pledged to my Patreon. Thank you for donating to my PayPal. And for all of those who aren't able to do any of this, don't even sweat it, because I appreciate all of you the same. I love all of you so much. Like I said, just keep watching my videos, leave likes, leave comments, all that good stuff. I'm going to do some live streams in the near future to interact with you guys a little bit more. And yeah, I kind of feel like my narration wasn't that great in this video. I kind of like rushed it because I just needed to get a video out. But I'm going to try to improve on that, on my narrating. And I really hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you will still stand by me through all these difficult times. But, yeah, I love all of you so much, and remember, stay